The series begins by introducing a woman named Shui Fei, whom we'll refer to as Shueli. As Shueli wakes up in her room, she's shocked to find that the man lying next to her isn't her husband. This shocking situation is witnessed by her mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Mrs. Shun and Shun Ryun. It was revealed that Shueli is married to a highly esteemed scholar named Shun Yurong, who is deeply respected at the palace for his intelligence and talents. Trusting only her husband, Yurong, Shueli goes with him to a certain place. During their journey, Yurong gives her water, which causes her to lose consciousness immediately. When she regains consciousness, Shueli finds herself in a burial pit. Realizing she's been betrayed by her husband's family, her despair deepens as her husband tells her that her father and younger brother have also died. Her father was executed on corruption charges, while her brother was murdered by criminals. Hearing this, Shueli is devastated. During her lowest moment, Yurong immediately strikes her and buries her alive. After committing this heinous act, Yurong meets with Princess Wan Ning to report his actions. At that moment, it's revealed that Princess Wan Ning orchestrated the entire plot, manipulating Yurong into carrying out the murder. The respected image Yurong held meant nothing before Princess Wan Ning, leaving him stripped of his dignity. On the other hand, a man is seen investigating an illegal salt smuggling case. This man, known as Xiao Hung or Duke Su, is renowned for his merciless approach to justice. During the investigation, Duke Su was accompanied by his two loyal subordinates, Wen Ji and Lu Ji. While discussing their findings, Duke Su's attention is drawn to the funeral procession of Shueli. Rumors spread that the scholar Shin's wife was killed while trying to escape with her lover. Meanwhile, in the forest, two young women are shown gathering medicinal herbs. They then come across a person being swept away by the river. The person is Shueli, who miraculously survived her ordeal. Introducing herself as Jiang Li, she is accompanied by her servant Tong Er. They offer to help, but the trauma leaves Shueli defensive and wary. Jiang Li, understanding her situation, promises to return with food later that evening. Jiang Li is revealed to be the daughter of a respected imperial archivist minister. She lives in a place called the Sacred Maiden Hall, where she's been exiled after being falsely accused of harming her stepmother. That evening, as Jiang Li secretly prepares to leave, she's caught by a female caretaker. As punishment, she's brutally whipped by the head of the hall, Dai Yun, leaving her body covered in scars. The next morning, after waiting all night for Jiang Li's return, Shueli decides to search for the two girls, leading her to the Sacred Maiden Hall. Eventually, she finds Jiang Li, who is visibly in pain. Knowing her end is near, Jiang Li shares words of encouragement with Shueli, advising her not to give in to despair. Jiang Li empathizes deeply, understanding the heartbreak Shueli feels from being betrayed by those she trusted most. For the past 10 years, Jiang Li has been exiled by her own family, accused of causing her stepmother's miscarriage. Despite her suffering, no one in her family cared or believed her. Jiang Li was never visited by her own father. Not long after, Jiang Li took her last breath there. When the head of the hall entered the room, she was shocked to find Jiang Li's body cold and lifeless. Shueli then appeared and threatened the hall's head, warning her that she would report her actions. In exchange, Shueli proposed a plan. From now on, Shueli would assume Jiang Li's identity. This meant that Jiang Li's death would be hidden from everyone. Agreeing with the plan, they immediately buried Jiang Li in Shueli's clothes with her flute. From this point forward, they would swap identities. To follow the story more clearly, we will now refer to Shueli as Jiang Li. A few days passed since the incident, and Jiang Li felt suspicious about the unusually tight security at the Sacred Maiden Hall. One night, while investigating the hall secretly, Jiang Li accidentally spotted a mysterious figure. The figure appeared to be a man who entered the room of the head, Dai Yun, and did something suspicious. Thinking of a way to escape from the Sacred Maiden Hall, Jiang Li considered using the upcoming visit of a minister's wife named Madame Lu, who was expected to arrive in a few days. Meanwhile, a man named Young Master Chun was seen running from Duke Su toward the Sacred Maiden Hall. This coincided with Jiang Li praying in the hall's temple when suddenly she was taken hostage by young Master Chen, until Duke Su soon arrived to apprehend him. Reading the situation quickly, Jiang Li pretended that she and young Master Chen were accomplices. Just as they were about to be executed, Duke Su swiftly captured the man. While leaving the temple, they were intercepted by Madame Lu, who turned out to be a close friend of Jiang Li's late mother, as Tong Er had intentionally called her to meet with Jiang Li. Continuing her act, Jiang Li pleaded with Madame Lu, claiming her innocence and suggesting they call for the hall's head, Dai Yun, to resolve the matter. This was the chance to expose Dai Yun's wrongdoing, as Madame Lu caught her in the act with a mysterious man. At the same time, by admitting to her role as an accomplice, Jiang Li was then taken by Duke Su to the capital for a formal trial. In short, at the Imperial Palace, news of the events at the Sacred Maiden Hall was reported by Madame Lu's husband, Minister of Finance Lu Yuanfeng. At that moment, Yuanfeng mentioned that the daughter of the archival minister, Zhang Yuanbai, named Jiang Li, could testify in this case. Hearing this, the emperor grew angry, as Duke Su had also submitted a memorandum implicating Jiang Li in an illegal salt smuggling conspiracy. Upon returning home, Jiang Li's father, Zhang Yuanbai, spoke to his wife, Jiang Li's stepmother Xu Ran, about the family's reputation. He explained that they must immediately retrieve Jiang Li from Duke Su and prove her innocence in the salt smuggling case. The next day, during the welcoming of Jiang Li, it became clear that Xu Ran did not like her presence. Xu Ran pretended to be happy, but was actually reluctant since, for 10 years, not one member of the family had visited Jiang Li. At that moment, Xueli could easily manage to enter the residence as the Jiang family's daughter. From now on, Xueli was determined to fulfill the late Jiang Li's wishes by seeking revenge on the family that had abandoned her for years. The story then introduces the extended Jiang family members. Apparently, Zhang Yuanbai has two younger brothers. The first is Zhang Yuanping, who is married to Lu Shi, while the youngest, Zhang Ruwen, has a wife named Mei Ling. Another important family member is the elder Lady Jiang, also known as Madame Jiang. It is known that Madame Jiang deeply loves Jiang Li. In fact, over the past 10 years, she has been the only one who remembered her granddaughter, faithfully sending items to the Sacred Maiden Hall. Unfortunately, these items never reached Jiang Li, suggesting someone's intention to eliminate her from the family. After a few days in the Jiang residence, Xu Ran assigned 2 servants to monitor and restrict Jiang Li's movements. At the same time, outside the pavilion, several people were busy arranging flowers for Ru Yao's coming-of-age celebration. Jiang Li learned of this event from one of Xu Ran's assigned servants and planned to use this occasion to reveal her true identity as Jiang Li, daughter of the Jiang family, to everyone present. We are next introduced to Yuan Ping's son, Jing Rui, who is noisy, arrogant, and never serious. He has a daily habit of carrying a turtle, his beloved pet. In short, on her way to an outing, Jiang Li accidentally encounters a man named Zhou Yanbang. They were actually engaged since children, but now Yanbang is set to marry Ru Yao. Upon reaching their destination, Jiang Li discovered that she was too late, as the item she sought had already been purchased by a man waiting for Jiang Li at a restaurant. Assuming that the man was Duke Su, Jiang Li approached him directly, requesting her pendant's return. However, Duke Su, still suspicious of her involvement in the illegal salt trade, interrogated her, questioning the hidden location of the salt. Using her intelligence and keen observation, Jiang Li cleverly deduced that the illegal salt was hidden behind the Sacred Maiden Hall's temple. As night fell, Jiang Li, still awaiting confirmation from Duke Su's subordinates, finally received news that the illegal salt was indeed hidden behind the temple at the Sacred Maiden Hall. With her information confirmed, Jiang Li returned to the Jiang residence. It was revealed that the pendant was an heirloom from her mother, given to her by her father when she married Xinyu Rong. At that time, Xueli had been forced to sell it to buy medicine for her husband's recovery. Upon her return to the residence, Jiang Li was approached by Yu Yi, the only daughter of Ru Wen, known for her domineering nature. At that moment, Yu Yi conveyed that Ru Yao had invited Jiang Li to attend her coming-of-age celebration, set to take place the next day. The next day, officials and nobles as seen arrived at the event. At that moment, Yu Rong, Shu Ran, and Ruo Yao were present, along with Duke Su, whose unexpected arrival stunned everyone and left them questioning why he was attending such an event. Meanwhile, Jiang Li, just waking up, was shocked to find it was already late morning. It turned out that the previous night, 2 servants sent by Shu Ran had blown smoke into her room, causing her and her maid to sleep deeply. Soon after, the coming-of-age celebration began with Ruo Yao looking beautiful and captivating as she took the stage. This event symbolized her entry into adulthood and readiness for marriage. In the middle of the celebration, the crowd was suddenly captivated by Jiang Li's graceful entrance. Yu Rong, Shu Ran, and Ruo Yao were horrified, seeing Jiang Li as the spitting image of the woman they believed they had killed, like a ghost returning to life. When she recalled the 10 years of suffering she endured in the sacred maiden hall, a noble daughter cast aside and denied her rights, Jiang Li seized this moment to assert her identity as a true Jiang family daughter before everyone. This revelation left Shu Ran and Ruo Yao speechless in front of the guests. Shortly after, fireworks were set off, marking the end of the celebration. Not wanting Jiang Li to stay any longer, Shu Ran cunningly persuaded Yuan Bai to arrange a marriage between Jiang Li and a handsome young man named Zhao Qi. Realizing this was Shu Ran's attempt to drive her away, Jiang Li decided to go along with it for now. To avoid appearing resistant, she pretended to accept the proposal. The next day, Madame Zhao and her son, Zhao Qi, arrived at the Jiang residence. When they had a moment alone, Zhao Qi bluntly stated that after marriage, he wanted Jiang Li to bear many children to continue the Zhao family line. However, Jiang Li, already aware of Zhao Qi's weaknesses, threatened him to cancel the proposal. Through her cleverness, Jiang Li had uncovered Zhao Qi's background. She had found out that he had a child with a mistress he hadn't dared to marry, knowing his mother would never approve of his chosen partner. Meanwhile, at the palace, Emperor Zhao was enraged after learning that several palace officials were involved in corruption within the Salt Agency. At the same time, Duke Su was still investigating the case, though he hadn't yet gathered strong enough evidence to bring these officials down. Later, on the academic side, Yu Rong, as the official in charge, was assigned by the emperor to oversee the annual selection of talented scholars for government positions. Upon hearing that Yu Rong was entrusted with the examination process, Princess Wan Ning, in her usual scheming manner, manipulated Yu Rong to take advantage of this opportunity. This time, Princess Wan Ning proposed a new policy, suggesting that both men and women participate in the annual examination. The emperor, who owed a past debt to Princess Wan Ning, felt obliged to accept her proposal. Jing Rue, upon hearing the news, rushed to inform Jiang Li. He explained that this year's examination, due to Yu Rong's new policy, would allow both men and women to participate. Intrigued, Jiang Li decided she would enter the annual examination herself. Afterward, Jiang Li approached her grandmother to ask for support in joining Minji Academy before the annual examination. To convince her, Jiang Li presented a piece of writing she had crafted during her time at the Sacred Maiden Hall. Impressed by the work, Madame Jiang, believing in her granddaughter's abilities, brought it to Yuan Bai. Just as Madame Jiang did, Yuan Bai was also astonished by his daughter's writing. Ultimately, Jiang Li received permission to attend Minji Academy. This decision, however, did not sit well with Shu Ran. She quickly persuaded Yuan Bai to call Yu Rong to test Jiang Li's knowledge. The following day, intending to tarnish Jiang Li's image, Shu Ran tried bribing Yu Rong to portray Jiang Li as a spoiled official's child with no talent, relying solely on wealth to gain entry into the academy. In that meeting, despite the painful memories, Jiang Li held herself strong, facing the man before her with resilience. At that moment, Yu Rong, deeply disturbed by her resemblance to the late Jiang Li, became emotional and hastily left. Before departing from the Jiang residence, Yu Rong told Yuan Bai that Jiang Li was intelligent and gifted. Back at his home, Yu Rong couldn't stop thinking about how Jiang Li's likeness to his late wife unsettled him. Driven to despair, he wandered as if haunted, eventually returning to dig up Jiang Li's grave at Qingqing Mountain. Fortunately, Jiang Li had foreseen this possibility and buried the real Jiang Li there in her place, ensuring that no one would suspect her. Sometime later, the day finally arrived for Jiang Li to begin her studies at Minji Academy. As she and Jing Rue entered the academy, they noticed a man walking while engrossed in a book. Jiang Li asked who he was, and Jing Rue explained that the man's name was Yi Shijie, her cousin from her mother's side, the Yi family. Shijie was one of the academy's top students, known for being solitary and focused solely on his studies, rarely forming friendships. On her second day at the academy, when Ji approached Jiang Li, inviting her to meet Duke Su at a restaurant. At their meeting, Duke Su, who had become suspicious of Jiang Li's identity as Shueli, explained that while they shared the same goals, they each had different methods. Not only that, with a deep understanding of the current political climate, Duke Su warned her that the path she was on held dangers akin to a fierce tiger ahead and a cliff behind. This meant that if Jiang Li chose her course, there would be no turning back. Because of this, he advised her to pause and carefully consider her next steps. Jiang Li, listening to Duke Su's ominous words, grew curious about the fierce tiger he referred to. The next morning at Minji Academy, Jiang Li tried to approach Shijie to persuade him to form a team with her. Although her invitation was met with a cold response, she didn't give up. Later that day, she invited Shijie to meet again, hoping to convince him. During this time, it was revealed that the tension between the Yi and Jiang families stemmed from an incident a year earlier, when a young Jiang Li had acted harshly and insulted her maternal family, who were then just a small merchant family. Tong Er later explained the truth to Jiang Li, who then clarified to Shijie what had actually happened. Jiang Li revealed that as a young, naive child, she had been unwittingly influenced by Xu Ran, who had deliberately turned Jiang Li against her mother's family, sowing a tension between the two families. Understanding the truth, Shijie finally softened and agreed to join her team. Because of this, Jiang Li's team was now complete, including herself, Shijie, Lu Su, and Jing Rue. The following day, a female student named Meng Hongjin caused trouble for Jiang Li's team, bringing along two young masters from the Li family. At that moment, they proposed a wager for the annual examination. If the Li team won, Jiang Li would return to the Sacred Maiden Hall, but if they lost, one of the young masters from Li's family vowed to become a monk. Remembering her past suffering, Jiang Li accepted the challenge. This decision shocked everyone present. Many began to look down on Jiang Li, thinking her foolish for taking on the challenge, especially since young master Li had consistently won first place in the annual exams for years. It seemed impossible that a young woman, new to the academy, could outshine these elite scholars. Additionally, the news spread throughout the capital, and the event became a popular gambling topic. Not long after, with her father's support, Jiang Li started showcasing her skill in playing the zither. Yet, midway through a performance, she suddenly felt pain in her wrist. Knowing this, Jing Rue and Tong Er took her to a healer for examination. During this time, the healer informed Jiang Li that an old injury on her wrist had flared up, and she was advised to rest for a month. This injury was a reminder of the chains and torture she had endured at the Shun family's hands. As the examination approached, everyone grew busy training for the annual tests just days away. At the same time, Lu Su practicing archery. Later, while Jiang Li and Lu Su were chatting, Duke Su appeared. It turned out that the open area they were using for practice was his usual hunting ground. As a result, Duke Su invited Jiang Li to practice archery with him. With Duke Su's guidance, Jiang Li successfully hit the target. However, when she tried shooting alone, her wrist pain returned. Noticing this, Duke Su suggested that Jiang Li visit his residence that day if she wanted a quick recovery. Not long after, at the general's residence, Jiang Li was introduced to a healer named Jiu, known for her unique method of healing using poisons. During the treatment, Jiu remarked that the injury was severe. She then produced a poisonous scorpion for the healing process. This method caused Jiang Li extreme pain, and as the scorpion's venom entered her body, she began to hallucinate. Later, after the treatment, Jiu informed Duke Su that Jiang Li would fully recover within 2 days, but during that time, she should avoid playing the zither. Several days later, the annual examination finally began, with the first test focusing on literature. Based on the highest scores, Shi Jie and Li Jin advanced. To determine the winner, these two would face off in a test of knowledge given by the examiners. In the final round, they would be asked a question, with the winner being the one who provided the most accurate answer to a question posed by Scholar Shin. The question presented in the exam asked for a solution to a scenario where a new emperor ascends the throne amid a vacancy in the treasury position, rampant corruption in the government, and a devastating drought affecting the empire. In the end, effective solutions were needed to address these pressing issues. At that moment, Shi Jie quickly answered, stating that the world is not inherently filled with problems. Rather, problems arise from irresponsible individuals. Therefore, he suggested that the first step should be to clean up the government, punish corrupt officials, and reclaim embezzled funds for the state treasury, which could then be used to aid disaster victims. In contrast, Li Jin had a different perspective. He agreed that corrupt officials needed to be addressed, but argued that they were also essential figures in the transportation and distribution of resources. Because of this, he proposed that the emperor should first focus on assisting disaster victims. Otherwise, failing to respond to the crisis could lead to a loss of public support, threatening the emperor's position. Based on their responses, Scholar Shin decided that Shi Jie's solution was the most effective. He reasoned that corrupt officials are never satisfied. Once they taste profit, they will never willingly relinquish it. If this greed continues, it would not only harm the public but also tarnish the emperor's dignity. On the second day of the exam, in the second round, Jing Rui was up against Shen Ruyun. During the match, Shen Ruyun realized that Jing Rui was using the exact technique Shui Li had once taught her. Back then, due to her aggressive and arrogant attitude during training, Shen Ruyun had grown frustrated by repeated losses and never grasped the final pattern needed to counter it. Remembering this, Shen Ruyun lost focus and eventually fainted, leading Jing Rui to win the second round. On the third day, in the third round, Jiang Li's team faced Hong Jin's team. This time, Lu Su struggled as the task required archery from an elevated height, triggering her fear of heights. As a result, she missed the target several times. In the final round, one of young Master Li's supporters cheated by injuring Jing Rui, causing the rope supporting Lu Su to lose balance, almost making her fall. As Hong Jin's team hit their target and celebrated their expected victory, an arrow suddenly soared, striking the target precisely. It was Lu Su's arrow, shot from an upside-down position. Seeing this, the crowd was astonished, unable to believe the incredible skill Lu Su had displayed. With Jiang Li's team winning the first 3 rounds, the final day was reserved for Jiang Li herself, who was set to compete against Rui Yao in the zither exam. The long-awaited day for Jiang Li finally arrived. On the 4th day, the annual examination continued with a test in zither playing. Jiang Li, fully prepared, arrived with determination to win. It was revealed that for this test, 5 examiners would oversee the performances. Among them were teacher Xiao, a zither instructor at the academy, Jing Hong, a renowned zither player, Mian Ju, a palace musician, Yu Rong, the capital's most esteemed scholar, and Duke Su, a government official from a family with a military background. Soon after, the competition began with each participant showcasing their best abilities. When Rui Yao's turn came, her performance was mesmerizing, captivating everyone watching. She performed a piece called Swan on the Desert Plains, reputed to be one of the world's most challenging songs. In Minji Academy's history, no one had dared to attempt this piece in the annual exams. Next was Jiang Li's performance. As she started playing, some students underestimated her for choosing an old, less popular folk song. Even the 5 examiners seemed puzzled by her selection. The piece, titled When the Sunflower Withers, the Fir Blossoms White, told the story of a woman lamenting her unjust fate. With its sorrowful melody, the song conveyed a deeply moving sense of melancholy. Despite Jiang Li's impressive performance, 3 of the judges initially underestimated her skills, considering them inferior to Rui Yao's chosen piece. However, as Jiang Li continued playing, The entire audience was captivated by her melody. Zhang Li had woven her own composition into the old folk song, creating an atmosphere where everyone could feel the sorrow and deep despair embedded in the music. Through her zither, Zhang Li seemed to express the suffering she had endured. Though her hands were injured, the pain was nothing compared to what Zhang Li had borne over the years. By the end of her performance, those who had initially looked down on her found themselves applauding, acknowledging her talent with genuine admiration. Soon after, the final judgment began. The first examiner and Duke Su cast their votes for Zhang Li. Next, the two female examiners, previously bribed by Xu Ran, voted for Ruo Yao. With the score tied, the deciding vote rested with Yu Rong. In the end, Yu Rong gave his vote to Zhang Li, crowning her team as the winners. As a result, news of Zhang Li claiming first place in the annual examination spread quickly throughout the capital. Despite her 10-year exile in the Sacred Maiden Hall, Zhang Li had managed to surpass the noble elites. On the other hand, unhappy with Zhang Li's success, Xu Ran and Consort Li conspired against her, planning to disgrace her at a banquet for the Academy students that evening at the palace. Consort Li, Xu Ran's younger sister and the emperor's favorite consort, intended to trap Zhang Li and rob her of her honor. That night, the banquet commenced at the palace, with the emperor presenting awards to each of them. During this time, Shi Jie received a position in the Ministry of Finance, while others were gifted jewelry and fine jade. Midway through the feast, Consort Li discreetly signaled to a servant. After the emperor departed, Princess Wan Ning appeared, representing the emperor to welcome them. Zhang Li, observing her closely, began to wonder if Princess Wan Ning had been the one behind Yu Rong's actions. At the same time, noticing the striking resemblance between Zhang Li and Xue Li, Princess Wan Ning felt compelled to propose an archery game. Understanding the princess's erratic behavior and wishing to avoid chaos, Yu Rong quickly volunteered to substitute for his students. Sensing the challenge, Princess Wan Ning instructed the servants to switch the practice arrows with real ones and demanded that Zhang Li aim at the teapot held by Yu Rong. As Zhang Li attempted to steady her focus, Princess Wan Ning intentionally nudged her, causing the arrow to veer dangerously close to Yu Rong. Fortunately, Duke Su arrived just in time to save Yu Rong from a near-fatal injury. After the situation settled, a palace servant approached Zhang Li with a letter. At the same time, another servant arrived to pour wine, which had secretly been laced with a drug on Ruo Yao's orders. To encourage Zhang Li to drink, Yu Yi approached her, inviting her to join in a toast. Shortly after drinking, Zhang Li felt dizzy and lost consciousness. Because of this, Yu Yi supported Zhang Li and led her away. Meanwhile, Shi Jie was also brought into the same room. It was all part of a scheme by Consort Li, Xu Ran, Ruo Yao, and Yu Yi to trap Zhang Li and Shi Jie, aiming to make them lose control and engage in forbidden acts. Fortunately, Zhang Li and Shi Jie, sensing the strange behavior around them, grew suspicious. Realizing the ill intent behind it, they quickly left the room and went their separate ways. As Yu Yi left Zhang Li, she accidentally found a letter that had fallen. It was an invitation from Zhou Yanbang, asking to meet Zhang Li. This discovery enraged Yu Yi, who had secretly admired Yanbang and had been pretending to be Zhang Li to see him. Seizing the opportunity, Yu Yi went to meet Yanbang herself. At the same time, in his drunken state and in the dim lighting, Yanbang, mistaking her for Zhang Li, approached her intimately. On the other hand, Ruo Yao, sensing it was the perfect moment, suggested to her friends that they explore the palace to find a suitable spot for tea. When they arrived at the room Zhang Li and Shi Jie had been in, they found nothing. Undeterred, Ruo Yao led them to another room. Suspecting something, they immediately entered, only to witness an unexpected scene, where Yanbang and Yu Yi together. Furious, Ruo Yao dragged Yu Yi away, calling her shameless and slapping her. Unfortunately, the force of the slap caused Yu Yi to stumble and injure her face. The following day, the emperor warned Duke Su that Princess Wan Ning would not relent. The emperor urged Duke Su to be vigilant, as Princess Wan Ning could very well attempt to kill him. He added that if Duke Su were to die, he would lose one of the few trusted people by his side. In the end, Duke Su promised to be cautious. Meanwhile, at Princess Wan Ning's residence, a frustrated Yu Rong requested that she stop bothering Jiang Li, insisting that Jiang Li was not Shui Li. Apparently, Yu Rong had verified this himself by redigging Shui Li's grave at Mount Qingcheng, where he confirmed that Shui Li's body remained. Despite this, Scholar Shun had lost all dignity, unable to resist anything Princess Wan Ning demanded. On the other hand, Jiang Li, feeling that her work to restore her family's honor in the capital was complete, planned to straighten out the misunderstanding between the Jiang and Yi families. Because of this, she sought out Uncle Yi, the younger brother of her late mother. During their conversation, Jiang Li expressed her intention to visit her mother's birthplace, the city of Luoyang. Elsewhere, the Emperor and Duke Su discussed Lord Cheng, the Emperor's half-brother and Princess Wan Ning's older brother. Duke Su reported that Lord Cheng's financial practices on the northern border were extravagant, with ongoing recruitment of soldiers and purchases of horses year-round. With the capital's funding cut off to Lord Cheng, Duke Su was now marked for assassination by him. Additionally, Duke Su suspected that the illegal salt trade was only a part of their revenue source, believing there to be an even larger hidden income stream. Consequently, Duke Su decided to travel to Luoyang, where, according to reports, Lord Cheng had established a special training ground for assassins. In the end, he warned that unless Lord Cheng was stopped before launching a rebellion, loyal ministers serving the emperor would likely be targeted and killed, one by one. After several days of travel, Jiang Li and Uncle Yi finally arrived in Luoyang. At that moment, Jiang Li felt something strange, as the residence was eerily quiet, almost as if it were abandoned. She suspected that the Yi family might be facing some trouble. Around the same time, Duke Su also arrived in Luoyang. He began his investigation at a brothel, meeting a woman named Wu Lan to gather information on a man named Chu Lan, a trusted aide of Lord Cheng. Meanwhile, Jiang Li was busy searching for a woman named Xiongji, who was known to work at the brothel. Though they were in the same place, Duke Su and Jiang Li remained unaware of each other. When Jiang Li found Xiongji, she immediately stated her purpose, to ask about a man named Shui Zhao. Xiongji was shocked at the mention of Shui Zhao, who was believed to be the younger brother of Shui Li and was thought to be deceased. In the past, Shui Zhao had been romantically involved with her. Xiongji then handed Jiang Li a map that Shui Zhao had left her. However, as neither woman understood its purpose, Jiang Li asked Xiongji to hold on to it. Xiongji, feeling indebted to Shui Zhao, offered to help Jiang Li find information about the death of Judge Shui Li's father. The next morning at the Yi residence, Jiang Li asked to accompany her cousin, Jia to the family store. During this moment, they found Uncle Mingyu arguing with a guard. It was revealed that Uncle Mingyu was the youngest brother of Jiang Li's late mother. Her mother, Yi Jin, was the eldest, followed by Uncle Yi, and then Uncle Mingyu. Seeing Jiang Li stirred up Uncle Mingyu's emotions as he was reminded of his beloved sister. Jiang Li softened and left the store with him. After she returned from the store, some official sent by the mayor of Luoyang arrived, intending to arrest Uncle Yi over a supposed murder linked to a brocade case. Because of this, Jiang Li asked for details, and the Yi family finally opened up, explaining that a rumor had spread that the brocade they sold could kill anyone who wore it. In a single night, this rumor had spread across Luoyang, causing customers to avoid the store and return their purchases. Despite this, the Yi family had already investigated and discovered one fabric causing red rashes when touched. As a result, Jiang Li suggested she and Jia examine the fabric further. The next morning, they arrived at the store to find a crowd demanding that a life be paid for a life, claiming the Yi family's brocade had caused someone's death. When Jia tried to calm the mob, someone threw an object at her. Soon, officials from the regulatory agency arrived, intending to arrest Jia. The crowd grew more agitated, escalating the chaos. Seeing this, Jiang Li took charge and addressed them directly. She asked where the rumor had originated, and an angry individual showed a rash on his skin, claiming it was from wearing the brocade purchased at the store. Using her skillful reasoning, Jiang Li questioned the logic of their assumptions, pointing out that the brocade she was currently wearing was also from their store and, as they could see, had caused her no harm. Using her status as the eldest daughter of the imperial archivist, a trusted scholar of the Yin Emperor, Jiang Li intimidated the officials and regulatory agents, challenging them for daring to make arrests without proper evidence. It turned out that the figures behind the regulatory agency and the mayor of Luoyang were members of the Li family. After that day, under orders from his father, Prime Minister Li Jin met with the mayor, advising him not to fear Jiang Li's threats as the archivist's daughter, but to focus solely on carrying out his father's orders. The next day, the issue of the brocade was further investigated by the Bureau of Weaving and Dyeing. They discovered traces of toxic belladonna mixed into the fabric. With this information, Jiang Li asked Uncle Ming Yu to accompany her to the black market to track down the supplier. During this time, Jiang Li and Uncle Ming Yu met the market leader, Lai Biao. However, to obtain the information they needed, they had to participate in a golden water duel, a drinking contest where each round's loser would drink a cup of liquor. The game involved rolling dice, with the highest roll winning each round. Shortly after, the game began. After several rounds, Jiang Li and Uncle Ming Yu were thoroughly defeated and too weary to continue. Fortunately, Duke Su arrived unexpectedly to assist them. Before the duel resumed, Duke Su greeted Lai Biao, referencing their past. It was revealed that Lai Biao was once a general close to General Ming Han, Duke Su's father, but he had been imprisoned for colluding with criminals. However, General Ming Han, aware that Lai Biao had been framed by Prime Minister Li, decided to free him, allowing him to escape. The duel continued, and once again, Jiang Li and Duke Su faced defeat, struggling to devise a winning strategy. Finally, Jiang Li noticed that Lai Biao had been using his keen hearing to determine the dice count. As a result, to disrupt his senses, she set off firecrackers, creating enough noise to distract him. Her strategy worked, and they succeeded in defeating him. As her reward, Jiang Li obtained information about the belladonna supplier. Afterward, Duke Su and his two subordinates began to track Wulan in hopes of capturing Chulan. Unfortunately, during the confrontation, Wulan, despite her years of loyalty, was ultimately killed by Chulan, and Duke Su failed to capture him. At dawn, a group of men stormed Dafeng Apothecary, slaughtering everyone inside, leaving no survivors. Later that day, Jiang Li and Uncle Ming Yu arrived at the apothecary. Noticing it seemed deserted, Uncle Ming Yu ordered his men to break in and investigate. Shortly after, the mayor of Luoyang, accompanied by regulatory agents, suddenly burst in, finding the apothecary in shambles with bodies scattered. Uncle Ming Yu's associate, who had entered moments earlier, was immediately accused of the massacre. All of this was revealed to be a trap orchestrated by the mayor and the Li family. Due to this incident, the opportunity to prove the Yi family's innocence grew even slimmer. At the same time, Madame Yi, overwhelmed, finally chose to give up. Not only that, to secure Uncle Ye's release, she decided to hand over the wealth her family had accumulated over generations to the mayor. Unwilling to watch the Yi family be destroyed, Jiang Li sought out Duke Su. For the first time, she asked him to help her reclaim the Yi family's wealth, which had been seized by the mayor. With Duke Su's assistance, the Imperial Regulatory Center from the capital intervened, conducting a surprise inspection to investigate the case. During the search, they found evidence of the Yi family's wealth in the mayor's office. Thanks to Jiang Li's brilliant strategy, the Yi family's crisis was resolved. During this time, Jiang Li was able to meet her grandmother, whom she had once insulted in her childhood. At that moment, Jiang Li knelt, apologizing, but her grandmother, who deeply loved her, forgave her immediately, expressing joy at being reunited with her granddaughter. After overcoming various challenges, Jiang Li and Duke Su grew closer. Jiang Li then openly confessed to Duke Su that she was not Jiang Li, but actually Xue Li. However, Duke Su responded calmly, saying he had known from the beginning. The next day, Jiang Li received news about Xiongji and went to meet her. Upon arrival, she was shocked to see her poor condition. Xiongji revealed that during her investigation, she had discovered that Xue Li's father, Judge Shui, was still alive. She explained that a few days prior, officials from Huai village visited the brothel where she worked, including a man named Feng Yutong. Offered 3 women, they instead requested one specific woman, Chue Zhu. Since Chue Zhu was new, her duties should have been limited to entertaining, nothing more. Although they paid a large sum, it couldn't compensate for the trauma inflicted on Chue Zhu. Upon finding the girl deeply scarred by the abuse, Qiongji felt empathy for her. When those men returned, no one dared to entertain them. Yet, determined to uncover information about Judge Shui, Qiongji sacrificed herself. In the end, Qiongji suffered the same fate as Chue Zhu, paying a high price to uncover the truth about Shui Li's father. Hearing this, Jiang Li was devastated to witness what Qiongji had endured. Before she passed, Qiongji handed Jiang Li a map left by Shui Li's younger brother. Shortly after passing it to Jiang Li, Qiongji drew her final breath. On the other hand, one of Duke Su's subordinates reported that Chu Lan's rent in Luyang was paid with gold nuggets, suggesting a nearby gold mine. Upon further investigation, they suspected the mine was located near Huai village. Without delay, they set out for the village. At the same time, Jiang Li, accompanied by Uncle Mingyu, decided to go there as well, the village where Shui Li was born and raised. Upon arrival, they found the village in a desolate state, looking almost abandoned. The streets were empty, and people rarely ventured out. To discover what was really going on, Uncle Mingyu deliberately caused a disturbance at a local gambling den, which drawing attention from the townspeople. As planned, he was promptly arrested and taken to the village court. With an alibi to secure her uncle's release, Jiang Li went to the court, where she encountered Feng Yutong, now serving as a judge. After paying a sum of money, her uncle was finally released, revealing just how corrupt the officials in Huai village's court had become. As they were about to leave, an elderly woman suddenly bumped into Jiang Li and discreetly handed her a letter. Back at their lodgings, Jiang Li examined the letter from the mute woman, Zining, which contained an address. The next day, to avoid suspicion, Jiang Li asked Tong Er to disguise herself as Jiang Li, while she went to meet Zining. Upon meeting her, Jiang Li learned that Zining had only pretended to be mute to stay in the court and secretly watch over Judge Shui, who was imprisoned by Feng Yutong. The next plan was to find someone who knew the reasons behind the tragedy that had befallen Shui Li's family. According to Zining, these individuals were held captive by Feng Yutong at a place called the Silt Lands, closely monitored by his men. As a result, the only option was to seek Duke Su's help. On the other hand, Duke Su's subordinates reported that they had pinpointed a likely location of the gold mine. During their discussion, Jiang Li arrived and explained her mission. Realizing they were investigating the same matter, specifically the Silt Lands, Duke Su shared his suspicions about the gold mine's location there. However, Duke Su's men mentioned their difficulty due to a lack of a detailed map of the mine. At the mention of a map, Jiang Li recalled the map given to her by Qiongji. This map turned out to be a map of the gold mine left by Shui Li's younger brother. The following morning, Jiang Li, Duke Su, and Lu Ji set off for the Silt Lands. Upon arrival, they quietly slipped in through a hidden passage. Venturing deeper, they overheard voices, which turned out to be 2 guards on duty. After knocking out the guards, Duke Su and Jiang Li disguised themselves in the guards' clothing. Eventually, they reached an area where they could see villagers from Huai being confined and forced to work in the mine. At this point, Jiang Li began to piece together the link between the massacre of her family, the gold mine, Yu Rong, and Princess Wan Ning. Apparently, Judge Shui had been an honest and just official, but with the mine situated in Huai village, they eliminated her family to turn the mine into a significant revenue source for the rebels. This was why Shui Li's family members had been murdered. In short, Jiang Li and Duke Su finally located her 2 cousins, Kai Wen and Yong Rue. Shui Li revealed her true identity, explaining that she now went by the name Jiang Li. Together, they stealthily exited through the hidden passage they had used earlier. Soon after, 2 patrolling guards stumbled upon the unconscious, unclothed guards, realizing intruders had infiltrated the mine. Because of this, the alarm was raised, and guards began blocking exits, forcing Jiang Li and her companions to fight their way out. Just as more guards swarmed, Duke Su's subordinates appeared, diverting the guards' attention, allowing Duke Su and the others to make their escape. Meanwhile, at the Huai village court, Feng Yutong was punishing his subordinates for failing to keep watch over Jiang Li. Not only that, but Zi Ning, who had previously passed information about the Silt Lands to Jiang Li, was also discovered. Proving himself to be a true demon in human form, Feng Yutong brutally killed Zi Ning in an inhumane way by throwing her to his caged wild dogs to be torn apart alive. Later that night at the Huai village court, Feng Yutong and his companions feasted as if nothing had happened, partying in their stolen wealth. Moments later, Duke Su and his team stormed the court gates to arrest Feng Yutong for illegal gold mining. Unexpectedly, Feng Yutong retaliated by threatening Judge Xue's life. It was revealed that Judge Xue was in a miserable state, suffering from years of torture and showing signs of severe trauma and mental illness. Seeing Feng Yutong's readiness to harm Judge Xue forced Duke Su to back down. As Feng Yutong and his men fled, Duke Su, who had anticipated this turn of events, had stationed people strategically. Amid the chaos, Feng Yutong suddenly began to feel the effects of poisoning, thanks to Duke Su's subordinate, who had been ordered to administer the poison earlier. Consumed by anger and a burning desire for vengeance, Jiang Li took a knife and approached Feng Yutong, stabbing him slowly. The first strike was in memory of her father and younger brother, the second for Zi Ning, the third for the officials Feng Yutong had wronged, the fourth for the people of Huai village, and the final strike for the suffering he had caused Qiongji. Shortly after, several men under Prime Minister Li arrived and launched an attack. Amid the chaos of arrows, it became clear that the real target was Feng Yutong himself. Following the incident, to prevent Judge Xue from facing a death sentence, Jiang Li, along with the villagers of Huai, set out for the capital to have the case heard directly by the emperor. On their journey, they stopped briefly in the city of Dingzhou, only to find it in a heartbreaking state. People were starving, desperate enough to resort to theft. That night, sensing that the situation in Dingzhou was unsafe, Jiang Li decided they should leave immediately. As they were close to escaping, several suspicious individuals incited the locals to block Jiang Li's carriage. Just when it seemed they would come to harm, Shi Jie and Jing Rue arrived in time, bringing large amounts of food to divert the crowd's attention. As the people scrambled for food, Judge Xue stepped down from the carriage to break up a fight between two men. Despite his fragile mental state, Judge Xue still showed kindness. Witnessing this, Jiang Li was reminded of the days when her father served as a judge in Huai village. He had once told her that he regarded his people as his own children. This prompted Jiang Li to return to the city, determined to resolve Dingzhou's food crisis. Back in the capital, it became clear that those who had tried to stop Jiang Li in Dingzhou were agents of Prime Minister Li, acting on Princess Wan Ning's orders. It was revealed that the forces behind the massacre of Xue Li's family, the gold mine, and the famine in Dingzhou were all orchestrated by Princess Wan Ning and corrupt officials plotting to rebel against the Yin Empire. As the situation in Dingzhou grew increasingly desperate, people who had gone days without food were in no situation to listen. Seizing the opportunity, Prime Minister Li's agents incited the starving townsfolk, urging them to capture Jiang Li. Just as tensions reached a boiling point, the Yi family arrived, announcing they had brought a large supply of food for the people. Because of this, order was finally restored in the city. Soon after, Jiang Li and the villagers of Huai reached the capital. As they entered the gates, Jiang Li was met by imperial court officials awaiting her arrest, under accusations from officials claiming she had aided a death row fugitive. However, before being taken away, Jiang Li requested permission to strike the complaint drum, a traditional means to seek justice. In that solemn moment, snow began to fall, moving onlookers deeply as Jiang Li passionately demanded justice for her family. With each beat of the drum, she called out, pleading for the winds to carry her words, for the heavens to recognize loyalty from betrayal. As she was about to be taken away, the Huai villagers, one by one, stepped forward to strike the drum and repeat her words, united in her quest for justice. Some time later, the day of the trial arrived. In the emperor's presence, Minister Zhou, head of the imperial court, requested Jiang Li to present her evidence. Jiang Li, however, explained that she had none and unexpectedly turned to ask the emperor to punish Judge Xue. The officials murmured, believing Jiang Li had given up. Supporting this, official Wei, who had previously handled Judge Xue's case, testified, claiming that evidence of Judge Xue's corruption, totaling 5,000 taels, had been found at his residence. He also mentioned witness Feng Yutong, but Jiang Li challenged this, requesting that the officials compare the assets of Judge Xue and Feng Yutong. Jiang Li then pointed out that after 10 years as an official, Judge Xue had no private residence, no land, and the 5,000 taels had inexplicably appeared at his home. At the same time, Feng Yutong, who had served only 1 year, owned over 40 private estates and vast farmland, totaling more than 200,000 taels. With this finding, Jiang Li questioned the official sense of logic, pointing out the absurdity of comparing Judge Xue's 5,000 dirty taels with Feng Yutong's 200,000 clean ones. Refusing to concede, official Wei argued that regardless of the amount, Judge Xue was still guilty of corruption. In response, Jiang Li called upon the Huai villagers to testify on Judge Xue's behalf. One by one, they recounted his kindness, how he had helped a widow and her child, paid school fees for poor children, protected the oppressed, and more. Some even offered to stake their lives on the truth of their words. Yet, official Wei, aligned with Prime Minister Li, tried to discredit Jiang Li, suggesting the villagers had been bribed to lie. The emperor, however, interrupted, noting that Jiang Li's arguments and evidence were rational and compelling. Because of this, he ruled that Judge Xue was innocent. However, for her final piece of evidence, Jiang Li presented Judge Xue himself before the emperor, displaying his fragile mental state, a result of years of imprisonment and torture by Feng Yutong. In the end, with the emperor's decision, Judge Xue's and Jiang Li's names were cleared. Shortly after the verdict, Princess Wanning appeared, causing an uproar. She accused Jiang Li of deceiving everyone, revealing that her true name was Xue Li and accusing her of killing the real Jiang Li. To support her claim, Princess Wanning brought forward Chief Dai Yun as a witness. At that moment, Chief Dai Yun confirmed the princess's words, but Jiang Li countered, calling a former subordinate of Dai Yun's, who testified that the current Jiang Li was indeed the true Jiang Li. In the midst of the commotion, the emperor commanded the guards to put an end to Princess Wanning's madness and arrest her. However, Princess Wanning, furious at being treated this way, became even more defiant, grabbing a soldier's sword and attempting to strike Jiang Li. At that moment, Yuanbai quickly stepped in as a shield for his daughter. Fortunately, Duke Su was able to stop Princess Wanning's rampage just in time. After the incident, the emperor decreed that Princess Wanning was to be confined to the palace indefinitely without permission to leave. Meanwhile, on the northern border, we meet Lord Cheng, Princess Wanning's older brother, who had long been assigned to defend the borders. His subordinate, Chu Lan, arrived to inform him about Princess Wanning's recent actions in the palace, along with news of the imperial government seizing the gold mine. Following the incident at the palace hall, Princess Wanning now planned to use Xu Ran to break Jiang Li, seeking out her weak points to exploit them, a tactic Princess Wanning often employed. This time, following the princess's advice, Xu Ran visited the imperial shaman of Yin, Li Wenchai. Seeing him, Xu Ran was stunned. The man before her was her past lover, whom she had believed dead after her father forbade their union and allegedly had him killed. Shocked, Xu Ran realized he had survived all this time. Meanwhile, another conflict arose at the ancestral hall of the Jiang family. After the men had finished their rites, Jiang Li unexpectedly stepped forward to pay respects to her late mother. This act violated family protocol, as women were traditionally forbidden from performing ancestral rites. At that moment, Yuanbai was not overly concerned by this, but Xu Ran was outraged and insisted on dragging Jiang Li out. During their confrontation, a woman suddenly appeared and attacked Xu Ran. The woman revealed to be Yuanbai's concubine, Consort Hu, who suffered from mental instability and had been confined to the temple. In the past, Consort Hu had been pregnant before Yuanbai's wife, but Lady Jiang, fearing that the firstborn would come from a concubine, sought to have the child terminated. However, Jiang Li's mother, known for her kindness, defended consort Hu, pleading that she be allowed to keep her child. After Jiang Li's mother's death, the Jiang family changed drastically. Yuan Bai soon married Xu Ran, and not long after, consort Hu's daughter, Yu Er, was reported to have drowned while playing. This tragic event left consort Hu mentally unstable. The following day, Jiang Li, feeling both curious and concerned, decided to visit consort Hu. During their conversation, consort Hu behaved normally, revealing that she had been feigning madness all along. Jiang Li's suspicions were confirmed, and she asked consort Hu to explain what had truly happened, as consort Hu had once been her mother's closest companion. Finally, consort Hu opened up, confessing that years ago, when young Ru Yao and Yu Er were fighting over a toy, Ru Yao began to cry. Xu Ran, seeing this, forcibly took the toy away, causing Yu Er to fall and tragically lose her life. To cover up her crime, Xu Ran disposed of Yu Er's body, framing her personal maid, who was subsequently exiled and vanished. Later that night at the Jiang residence, under Xu Ran's orders, Annie's son prepared a soup laced with poison. After Ruo Yao drank it, Annie's son confessed that she had been forced into it. Realizing she'd been poisoned, Ruo Yao grabbed Annie's son and demanded to know what she had mixed in. By morning, the Jiang family, seeing Ruo Yao's condition, grew alarmed. Xu Ran then began her act, claiming that something supernatural was at play. Convincing the family of this, Xu Ran arranged for the imperial shaman to visit. Soon after, the shaman arrived and assured the Jiang family that Ru Yao was indeed under attack from an evil spirit. As night fell, he began a ritual, eventually pointing to Jiang Li and declaring that the malevolent spirit was within her, a spirit from Mount Qingqing. To perform an exorcism, he requested that Minister Jiang grant him permission to take Jiang Li away. Amid this turmoil, Jiang Li decided to turn the tables by pretending to be possessed, acting as if the spirit of Yu Er had taken over. She cried out, pointing and begging not to be killed. Xu Ran, not wanting to be exposed, urged the shaman to act quickly. He moved to strike, sword aimed at Jiang Li, when Tong Er suddenly appeared, shielding her. At the same time, panic ensued as onlookers fled the scene. Despite Tong Er's sacrifice, the shaman was relentless, attempting once again to kill Jiang Li. Tong Er, injured, continued to defend Jiang Li, putting herself at risk. Just as the situation spiraled out of control, Duke Su's subordinates arrived, engaging the shaman in combat and successfully wounding him. Fleeing, the shaman took Xu Ran with him. As Jiang Li watched Tong Er pass away, grief overwhelmed her at losing her closest ally. At the same time, the shaman and Xu Ran could not get far in their escape, as the shaman ultimately succumbed to his injuries. Shortly after this shocking series of events, two servants discovered that consort Hu had done the unthinkable, leaving behind a message revealing the long-hidden truth that Zhenzhen had been murdered by Xu Ran. In light of this turmoil, the Jiang family sentenced Xu Ran to confinement. When Jiang Li visited her, she began to confront Xu Ran, instilling guilt and recounting all her misdeeds in her pursuit of power within the Jiang household. Jiang Li then reminded Xu Ran of the murders she had committed, Zhenzhen, consort Hu's daughter, and even Jiang Li herself. Hearing this confession shook Xu Ran. Haunted by Jiang Li's words, Xu Ran spiraled into madness. Meanwhile, the political tension in the imperial court intensified. With the Jiang family losing their influence, most officials now sided with Princess Wan Ning and Lord Cheng, pressuring the emperor to honor Lord Cheng's return. The official stance made the emperor and Duke Su realize that Lord Cheng was likely preparing for a rebellion. To counter this threat, they planned to form an alliance with the Zhao Empire. If the two empires could join forces, they would not need to fear the strength of Lord Cheng's northern forces. After all her efforts, protecting her family in Huai village, restoring Jiang Li's honor as the archivist's daughter, reuniting the Jiang and Yi families, and avenging Xu Ran's wrongdoings and killing Jiang Li's mother and Jiang Li herself, Shueli was ready to confront Yu Rong to settle her past grievances. She then planned to use the reception for the Zhao Empire alliance as an opportunity. With Shi Jie's assistance in speaking to the emperor, Jiang Li was chosen to perform the qin alongside Yu Rong at the event. When Princess Wan Ning learned of this, she sent assassins to kill Jiang Li after her rehearsal that night. Fortunately, Yu Rong intervened just in time, saving Jiang Li from harm. When Jiang Li returned home, Duke Su confronted her, questioning her risky decision to provoke Princess Wan Ning. Duke Su then urged her to cancel her performance with Yu Rong, fearing that Princess Wan Ning would go to any length, even murder, to prevent Jiang Li from approaching Yu Rong. However, Jiang Li felt she had no choice. Frustrated, Duke Su left, concerned for her safety. The next day, the Zhao Empire's emperor arrived to a grand welcome. That evening, he was treated to a performance by Jiang Li and Yu Rong, who played a traditional piece representing the shared history of the two empires. Back at the Shen residence, preparations were underway to celebrate the success of their performance, with all academy students invited, including Jiang Li. During the event, Jiang Li quietly slipped away to wander the estate, haunted by memories of her painful past. Soon, Yu Rong approached, revealing he had known from the start that she was truly Shueli. Jiang Li confirmed this, admitting her true identity. At that moment, Yu Rong confessed his regret for burying Shueli alive and disclosed that it was Xu Ran and Ru Yao who had set up Shueli in the affair that had ruined her. However, Yu Rong claimed he could not defend her then, as Princess Wan Ning had threatened to kill Xu Ran and Ru Yao if he did not comply. Disgusted by his excuses, Jiang Li was revolted, which only provoked Yu Rong's inappropriate advances. Fortunately, Shi Jie arrived just in time to intervene. Jiang Li quickly asked Shi Jie to leave, fearing the Yi family could again be endangered by imperial politics since Princess Wan Ning and Lord Cheng were behind Yu Rong. Later, Jiang Li reported Yu Rong's actions, leading to his arrest by the High Court. Word soon reached Princess Wan Ning, who summoned Jiang Li to her residence, threatening her to retract her accusations and restore Yu Rong's reputation. Later, Princess Wan Ning used Xue Zhao, who she had secretly held captive, as leverage, threatening to kill him if Jiang Li did not comply. Feeling powerless, Jiang Li grew anxious and withdrawn during Yu Rong's trial at the High Court. Under intense pressure, Jiang Li ultimately withdrew her accusations, resulting in her being charged with defaming an imperial official and subsequently imprisoned. Upon his release, Yu Rong went straight to Princess Wan Ning, suggesting a marriage proposal to the emperor as a way to control Jiang Li. Initially, Princess Wan Ning opposed the idea, but after Yu Rong's persuasion, she reluctantly agreed. To ensure the plan's success, Princess Wan Ning instructed Consort Li to persuade the emperor to approve the marriage, threatening to reveal Consort Li's involvement in a past crime if she refused. As planned, the emperor granted approval for the marriage, and Jiang Li was released. When she met Yu Rong, who awaited her release, he explained the emperor's decree for their marriage. However, Jiang Li felt nothing but disgust at the idea of marrying Yu Rong. Meanwhile, Duke Su, refusing to stand idle, continued his investigation and uncovered that Princess Wan Ning was blackmailing Consort Li using a witness who linked her to the death of the imperial consort. Digging deeper, Duke Su finally secured the servant's testimony. He then escorted Jiang Li to the Yin Imperial Palace. Upon arrival, Jiang Li met with Consort Li, revealing the testimony obtained from Duke Su. Consort Li, surprised, questioned who was supporting Jiang Li to allow her such free access to the palace and the ease of obtaining evidence. However, Jiang Li merely replied that this was unimportant. For now, she needed her assistance at the birthday banquet the following day. That evening, Duke Su visited Princess Wan Ning, pretending to be infatuated. He asked her to cancel the marriage arrangement in exchange for the Long Wu warrior medallion. The Long Wu soldiers were elite fighters in the Yin Empire. Offering the medallion meant risking a shift in power. In reality, Duke Su and the Emperor were using this as a ruse to provoke Lord Cheng into rebellion. At Consort Li's birthday banquet, Jiang Li used her performance opportunity to play Huai Village, a song that stirred memories of Yu Rong's past. The plan, devised with consort Li, succeeded in unsettling Yu Rong. In the midst of the event, Princess Wan Ning, without realizing it, drank wine specially prepared by consort Li. The following morning, Princess Wan Ning awoke feeling unwell. When examined by the royal physician, he appeared alarmed and hesitantly reported that she was pregnant, contradicting a prior diagnosis stating she could never conceive. Enraged by this revelation, Princess Wan Ning ordered her guards to execute the physician, Zhang. Despite this, news of her pregnancy soon reached Duke Su and Jiang Li. This was all part of Jiang Li's plan with consort Li's help. The wine had contained a poison that mimicked pregnancy symptoms, which would wear off in a month. The scene then shows a glimpse of Princess Wan Ning's tragic past, revealing the pain that shaped her into the person she became. As the Yin Empire's first princess, she was sent to the Dai Empire camp as a political hostage. Her time there was harrowing. She was tortured, treated as a servant, and forced to satisfy the depraved desires of the Dai Emperor. Worse, she was denied basic shelter, left to sleep outside in the cold, as if she were an animal. Eventually, Princess Wan Ning became pregnant from the abuse. Unwilling to bear the child, she chose to end the pregnancy. This trauma scarred her deeply, fueling her ruthless behavior toward others as a coping mechanism. Back in the Yin Empire's capital, rumors about Princess Wan Ning's pregnancy spread rapidly. To stop the scandal spreading, Yu Rong visited Princess Wan Ning and suggested that she marry Li Jin, whose noble background made him a more appropriate match. This suggestion crushed Princess Wan Ning, as she realized Yu Rong would never acknowledge their relationship. The following day, a sudden wedding between Princess Wan Ning and Li Jin took place, leaving onlookers speculating that it might be intended to stop the rumors about Princess Wan Ning's pregnancy. That night, an elderly man arrived at Duke Su's residence. This man was none other than General Xiao Dechuan, Duke Su's grandfather. Soon after, Duke Su himself returned home. Finding his grandfather there, he immediately reprimanded Wenji for allowing a stranger to enter. It became clear that there was tension between grandfather and grandson. Meanwhile, in the Li household, Princess Wan Ning, who had a domineering nature, treated her new husband, Li Jin, like a servant, despite his noble lineage. When Li Jin tried to stand up for himself, Princess Wan Ning slapped him, prompting him to declare he wasn't like Yu Rong, her pet dog, and that he came from a respected noble family. He then stormed off, unaware of the consequences his actions would bring. Overcome with anger, Princess Wan Ning suffered abdominal pain. When examined, the physician informed Prime Minister Li that she had miscarried. Devastated, Princess Wan Ning vowed to kill Li Jin. To protect his son, however, Prime Minister Li decided to rebel against her. Amidst the turmoil, Yu Rong arrived, explaining that they had all fallen into a trap. He revealed that consort Li had helped Jiang Li deceive Princess Wan Ning with a poison that mimicked pregnancy symptoms. Later, at Duke Su's residence, Jiang Li, learning of the strained relationship between the elderly general and Duke Su, sought to reconcile the two. During their conversation, the old general disclosed the truth. His son, General Ming Han, had been betrayed by Lord Cheng during a battle with the Dai Empire. At that time, General Ming Han and his 100 men were left stranded as Lord Cheng cut off their escape route, leaving them to face the overwhelming forces of the Dai. The old general had stayed silent all these years to protect the young Duke Su, as Lord Cheng had threatened to eliminate his entire family if he spoke out. A few days later, with Lord Cheng's forces nearing the capital, Yu Rong secretly visited him under the cover of night. It was revealed that Yu Rong had orchestrated the rebellion's tactics and plans from the beginning. This time, Yu Rong proposed a new strategy, faking Princess Wan Ning's death and blaming the emperor, which would serve as a justification for their uprising. The next day, Lord Cheng arrived in the capital and was received by the emperor and the imperial court officials. During the imperial ancestral worship ceremony, the three royal siblings, the emperor, Lord Cheng, and Princess Wan Ning, prayed together. In a flashback, it was shown that the current emperor was the legitimate son and designated heir of the former emperor, while Lord Cheng and Princess Wan Ning were children of the grand consort. It was also revealed that the former emperor's death was not due to illness, but was the result of Princess Wan Ning's vengeance, as she killed her father out of resentment for being sent as a hostage to the Dai Empire. Meanwhile, a new crisis emerged as Jiang Li was captured and held hostage by Princess Wan Ning. Driven by his lingering feelings for Jiang Li, Yu Rong daringly attempted to free her, drugging Jiang Li and taking her away. Just then, Princess Wan Ning appeared, determined to stop them. Feeling betrayed, she returned the hairpin Yu Rong had once given her, and in a shocking move, she used it to do the unthinkable. As a result, Princess Wan Ning died instantly. Afterward, Yu Rong handed Princess Wan Ning's body to Li Jin, giving him a pretext to incite rebellion. Yu Rong then hid Jiang Li in the Li residence. Shortly after his departure, Duke Su's allies, the old general and Lai Biao, arrived to rescue her. In the imperial banquet hall, Li Jin presented Princess Wan Ning's body, falsely claiming the emperor had murdered her. Using her death as leverage, he incited the court to avenge the first princess. In the end, rebel forces began attacking the capital from all sides. To ensure the emperor's safety, Lu Ji took charge of escorting him out of the city. At the main gate, Yu Rong ordered the elite Long Wu soldiers to open it, allowing the northern border forces to enter. Just as the northern troops began their assault, reinforcements from the Zhao Empire, led by Zhou Yu, arrived. At that moment, they immediately joined forces, battling and ultimately defeating Chulan. Elsewhere, Duke Su, aware of the Long Wu soldiers' approach to the palace, hurried to distract them, leading the soldiers away from the capital. Cornered and ready to make his final stand, Duke Su found himself taunted by Yu Rong, who mocked him for supposedly having no one by his side. But Yu Rong's confidence shattered as Jiang Li suddenly appeared, declaring her readiness to die with Duke Su. She demonstrated true loyalty, explaining that it meant standing by someone even at death's door. In the heat of the moment, Jiang Li aimed an arrow at Yu Rong, who was caught off guard, dismissing her as someone unskilled in archery. He was proven wrong as she hit his hand, causing him to drop his weapon, which Duke Su then seized. Realizing that Xue Li would never return to him, Yu Rong, in despair, chose to do the unthinkable by jumping from a height. Despite this, Jiang Li didn't look back, continuing forward with resolve, thus ending the tragic story of a scholar who failed to understand true loyalty. As Duke Su and the Long Wu soldiers counterattacked the rebels, Lord Cheng attempted to secure his escape by threatening the emperor's favorite consort. In a surprising twist, Consort Li sacrificed herself, creating an opening that Duke Su used to avenge his father's death, beheading Lord Cheng. With Lord Cheng defeated, all who were part of his and Princess Wan Ning's schemes were arrested. At the same time, news spread that Judge Xue and Xue Li's younger brother were recovering. Not only that, Duke Su and Jiang Li found happiness together, marrying and settling in the capital. That night, Jiang Li gave Duke Su a pendant as a lucky charm. Not long after, as the noble-born general, Duke Su was appointed by the emperor to continue defending the Yin Empire and handle threats from the northern frontier. Months passed, with Jiang Li faithfully awaiting his return. On the battlefield, Duke Su and his loyal men, Wen Ji and Lu Ji, fought valiantly against the Dai Empire. One by one, they fell. Lu Ji took a spear to protect Wen Ji, who in turn was struck by dozens of arrows. Duke Su alone survived, managing to slay the Dai Empire's general. The story concludes with Duke Su returning victoriously to the capital, where he reunited with his beloved, Jiang Li. Moral lesson from the story: sometimes, sneaking through hidden passages and borrowing guard uniforms is a totally legit plan. Just make sure you remember where you left your original clothes.